When most people hit a wall, when they feel burned out, when they feel like they're drowning, they think the solution is to push harder, to grind longer, to work through the night, to do more faster and with more intensity. But that's exactly the trap that keeps people stuck in cycles of exhaustion, frustration, and disappointment. It's not about pushing harder, it's about creating smarter. You don't need more stress. You need systems, because systems set you free. Think about it, stress is a byproduct of uncertainty. Stress is the feeling that you don't know what's coming next, that you can't trust the process, that everything depends on you holding all the pieces together with your bare hands. That's why it feels heavy. That's why it feels endless. But when you build systems, you create predictability. You create clarity. You create flow. Suddenly, the same tasks that used to drain you become automatic, efficient, and energizing. The most successful people in the world aren't superhuman. They don't have 10 extra hours in the day. They aren't more disciplined than you. They aren't stronger than you, and they aren't luckier than you. What they have are systems, rituals, structures that take the thinking out of the ordinary and free up their energy for the extraordinary. Ask yourself, where in your life are you reinventing the wheel every single day? Where are you relying on motivation instead of mechanics? Where are you depending on willpower when what you really need is a repeatable process? Because motivation will fade, willpower will run out, but a system will keep working for you even when you don't feel like working. When you build systems, you take the emotional drama out of progress. You stop waking up wondering if today will be a good day or a bad day. Instead, you know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how it will compound over time. That's power. That's leverage. That's freedom. Stress whispers, you're not enough. You're falling behind. You'll never get it all done. But systems say, I've got you. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Do this and you'll move forward. Systems allow you to focus on what matters instead of being buried by what doesn't. So I challenge you today, don't just chase success, design it. Don't just hope for peace of mind, engineer it. Don't just wish life felt lighter, build the systems that make it inevitable. Because the truth is, the quality of your life is not determined by the goals you set, but by the systems you commit to. Stress is something that creeps into your life when you don't feel like you have a grip on what's happening or what's coming next. It's that constant sense of uncertainty, the nagging feeling that you're juggling too many balls, and at any moment one of them is going to crash to the floor. And the more you try to hold them all in the air, the heavier they feel, until eventually you're not just tired, you're overwhelmed, you're drained, you're questioning whether you can actually keep going like this. But what most people don't realize is that the root of stress is not simply the workload. It's not even the challenges themselves. It's the lack of structure around them. It's the absence of systems that turns tasks into stress. And that's why people who operate with clear systems seem to glide through situations that would crush others, because they've removed the uncertainty from the process. They know what comes next. They've designed a way of working that creates clarity instead of confusion. Imagine two people with the same responsibilities, the same number of hours, the same set of demands. One of them is constantly on edge, feeling like time is slipping away, feeling like there's never enough room to breathe. The other is calm, composed, efficient, almost as if life bends to their rhythm rather than the other way around. What's the difference? It's not intelligence. It's not energy. It's the presence of systems. The second person has mapped out what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, and how it needs to be handled so their mind doesn't burn unnecessary fuel on figuring things out again and again. They've turned complexity into clarity, and clarity dissolves stress. Think of your mind like a computer. When you don't have systems in place, you've got too many programs open at once. You've got tabs running in the background, reminders floating in your head, alarms going off about deadlines, and all of that processing power is being wasted on managing chaos instead of moving forward. But when you install systems, it's like installing automation. The programs run smoothly, the background noise disappears, and suddenly your mental energy is freed for creativity, problem solving, and growth rather than firefighting. And that shift alone changes your experience of life from survival to mastery. Stress often feels like an enemy, but it's really a signal. It's a flashing red light that says you don't have enough certainty in your process. You're relying on guesswork and reaction instead of design and intention. And every time you wake up without a clear plan, you're setting yourself up for stress to hijack your day. You become reactive instead of proactive. You allow the outside world to dictate your priorities. Your phone notifications become your to-do list. Your email inbox becomes your strategy. And by the end of the day, you wonder why you feel drained yet unproductive. The answer is simple. You're living without systems. When you create systems, clarity enters. Imagine a morning routine that primes your mind and body every single day, so you're not waking up in chaos but in control. Imagine a work structure that organizes your biggest priorities first, so you're not drowning in distractions but moving steadily toward results. Imagine financial systems that automatically allocate your money, so you're not constantly stressed about bills or savings. Clarity in action removes uncertainty, and with it removes stress, because stress thrives in the unknown, and systems shine light into the unknown. They give shape to the formless, order to the disorder, structure to the scattered. Without systems, uncertainty multiplies. Every new challenge feels heavier because it lands on a foundation that's already unstable. Every small disruption feels catastrophic because it's another weight on top of chaos. But when systems exist, disruptions become manageable. You know where they fit. You know how to absorb them. You know how to adjust without collapsing. And that resilience is what gives people peace of mind, because peace of mind doesn't come from everything going perfectly. It comes from knowing that whatever happens, you have a way to handle it. That is what clarity through systems provides. The irony is that most people think systems are restrictive. They think routines are boring. They think structure suffocates freedom. But the opposite is true. Structure creates freedom, because when you know what needs to be done and you've built a reliable process for doing it, your mind is no longer enslaved to stress. You don't carry the burden of uncertainty. You don't lie awake at night worrying about what you forgot. You're free to enjoy your life because the essentials are taken care of. Clarity gives you confidence, and confidence dissolves stress. At its root, stress is not the price of ambition. Stress is the cost of poor design, and clarity is the currency of peace. Systems are the mechanism that converts stress into certainty, chaos into order, doubt into direction. And when you understand that stress comes from uncertainty and systems create clarity, you stop chasing relief through temporary escapes like distractions, entertainment, or procrastination. And instead, you begin building the foundation that makes relief unnecessary, because you're not escaping stress. You're eliminating it at the source. Motivation is like a spark. It ignites quickly, it burns hot, but it fades fast. And if your entire plan for success is built on waiting for motivation to strike, then you'll always find yourself in cycles of starting strong and falling off, feeling inspired and then feeling stuck, believing you're on the verge of a breakthrough, only to slide back into the same patterns that held you before, because motivation was never meant to carry you long term. It's an emotion, and emotions are fleeting. They rise and fall with your state, with your energy, with your circumstances, with the way the world treats you on any given day. But systems don't depend on your feelings. Systems don't care whether you're motivated. They don't ask you if you feel ready. They simply execute. And that is the difference between those who succeed consistently and those who struggle endlessly. The winners have built systems that carry them forward regardless of how they feel. Think about the gym. How many people join in January fired up with motivation? They go hard for a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and then the fire fades. The excuses creep in. The schedule feels tight. The results take longer than expected, and suddenly they stop showing up. But the few who keep going, the ones you see in there year after year, it's not because they're always motivated. It's not because they leap out of bed every morning desperate to sweat. It's because they've built it into a system. It's in their calendar. It's in their routine. It's non-negotiable. And so even on the days when motivation is zero, the system is still 100% alive. And that is why they progress. When others stall, motivation is like the weather, unpredictable, unstable, ever-changing. And if you depend on it, you're building your life on shifting sand. But systems are like the foundation of a house, firm, stable, unshakable. They hold you steady through storms. They don't collapse when the wind changes. They provide certainty and direction, even when your emotions want to pull you in 10 different directions. That's why the most disciplined people in the world often don't look disciplined at all. They're not fighting battles every day. They're not relying on sheer willpower. They've simply created systems that make discipline automatic. So what looks to outsiders like extreme willpower is actually just well-designed systems doing their job. Consider eating habits. Someone motivated might stick to clean eating for a week or two. Then they hit a stressful day, motivation dips, cravings rise, and they give in. Then they feel guilty. Then they start again, and the cycle repeats. But someone with a system has already prepared meals ahead of time, has already stocked their kitchen with the right foods, has already built routines that make the right choices easy and the wrong choices hard. So whether they feel motivated or not, the system is guiding them to success. Their results don't depend on a burst of willpower. They depend on a structure that works automatically. This is why so many people stay stuck, because they confuse inspiration with transformation. They think that if they just get fired up enough, they'll change their life. They think that a new book, a new video, a new seminar will give them the motivation they need to turn everything around. But they don't realize that without systems, that motivation will evaporate like smoke, leaving them right back where they started. Because transformation isn't born from moments of motivation. It's born from systems repeated daily, executed consistently until success becomes inevitable. Motivation can light the match, but systems keep the fire burning. Motivation can get you started, but systems keep you going. And the real power lies in taking the fleeting moments of motivation and channeling them into building systems that last. When you feel inspired, don't just chase the emotion. Use that energy to design the structures that will continue carrying you when that emotion fades. Build the calendar, set up the reminders, create the routines, automate the processes, because those are the tools that make progress automatic. Think about high performers in any field, athletes, entrepreneurs, artists. They all understand this truth. They don't rely on whether they feel like practicing. They have systems that ensure they practice. They don't depend on whether they feel like creating. They have systems that bring them into flow. They don't wait for motivation to strike like lightning. They've built systems that generate results every single day, and that's why their growth looks relentless, because it is not through constant motivation, but through constant execution powered by systems. Motivation is unreliable. It's fragile. It can be crushed by a bad day, by an unexpected setback, by a single harsh word. But systems are resilient. They don't care if you had a rough morning. They don't care if you feel tired. They don't care if you're doubting yourself. They simply guide you through the steps you've already decided matter. They keep you moving forward. When your feelings try to hold you back, they make success the path of least resistance. And that's the secret. You don't need to fight your emotions every day. You need to outsmart them with systems that make winning automatic. When you understand that motivation fades, but systems make success automatic, you stop chasing highs and start building habits. You stop asking how you can feel more motivated and start asking how you can design better systems. You stop seeing discipline as a personal struggle and start seeing it as a structural solution. Because the truth is, you don't need to become a different person. You don't need to force yourself into endless motivation. You just need to design systems that carry you when your motivation disappears. And when you do that, success becomes inevitable because it's no longer tied to how you feel. It's tied to the systems you've built. Rituals and structures are the hidden engines behind every life that looks effortless from the outside. People often look at someone who seems calm under pressure, creative in the face of challenge, productive without appearing frantic, and they assume that person was born that way, that they just have some natural gift or endless supply of energy. But the truth is that behind that flow, there are rituals and structures that support them, routines that keep their energy aligned, frameworks that protect their focus, patterns that make consistency second nature. And when those elements are in place, you no longer have to waste energy deciding what to do or fighting distractions because the path has already been carved out. The system is already carrying you. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you have. It's even more important than time because you can have plenty of time, but if your energy is scattered or drained, you won't use that time well. And what most people don't realize is how much energy they waste in constant decision-making, in reacting to whatever pops up, in improvising their way through every single day. Rituals solve this. Structures solve this. They remove the need for constant decisions by locking in patterns that automatically take you in the right direction. And the moment you remove that decision fatigue, your energy rises, your clarity sharpens, and your productivity soars. Not because you are pushing harder, but because you are no longer leaking power in all directions. Consider a morning ritual. Many people roll out of bed with no plan, grab their phone, scroll through messages, check notifications, and immediately place themselves in a reactive state. Their mind is consumed by outside demands before they've even centered themselves. And then they wonder why their day feels scattered. But someone with a structured morning ritual does the opposite. They set aside time to prime their body, their emotions, and their mind. Maybe it's exercise, journaling, meditation, or visualization. But whatever it is, it becomes a system, a ritual that sets the tone. So before the world even touches them, they've anchored themselves in clarity and direction. That one ritual can completely alter how the rest of the day unfolds because it places them in command rather than in chaos. Structures extend beyond rituals. They govern how you approach work, relationships, health, and growth. Without structures, you are constantly improvising. You are constantly burning energy to figure out what to do next. And because of that, you are easily pulled off track by distractions or emotions. But when you've built structures, when you've designed a system for handling emails, for organizing projects, for scheduling deep work, for maintaining health, suddenly the noise fades because you're not asking, what should I do? You're simply following the flow of a structure that was already created with intention. And that saves enormous amounts of energy. One of the greatest benefits of rituals and structures is that they allow you to put your creative energy where it matters most, because if you are burning creativity on everyday logistics, you won't have any left for innovation, problem solving, or growth. Structures take care of the repetitive and predictable. Rituals anchor your state. And as a result, your energy is freed for the unpredictable. The big ideas, the breakthroughs, the deeper connections, the things that actually create transformation. That's why people who live by rituals and structures don't just get more done. They get the right things done, and they do them with a presence of mind that stress-filled people can never match. Think of athletes. The ritual of warm-ups, the structure of training, the repetition of drills, all of that isn't just physical preparation. It's mental preparation. It's energy management. It's making sure that when the game starts, they are in peak condition. They don't leave it up to chance. They don't rely on waking up hoping they'll feel ready. They create readiness through rituals. They maintain it through structures. And the same principle applies to business leaders, artists, entrepreneurs, anyone at the top of their field. They've replaced chaos with consistent rituals that protect their energy and structures that channel it into impact. Rituals also have a psychological effect. They create a sense of certainty, and certainty breeds confidence. When you repeat the same powerful actions every day, you create a feedback loop that says, I am prepared, I am focused, I am moving forward, and your subconscious begins to trust the process. Stress shrinks, doubt fades, and energy rises, because instead of questioning if today will be productive, you already know it will. The ritual guarantees it, the structure enforces it, and that inner certainty radiates into everything you do. Another key factor is that rituals and structures protect you from the seduction of distraction. In a world designed to steal your attention, at every turn it is easy to get pulled away from what matters, but a structure keeps you aligned. If you've blocked time for deep work, you don't need to negotiate with yourself about whether to check social media. The decision has already been made by the structure. If you have a ritual of reflection at the end of the day, you don't need to wonder if you're progressing. The system will reveal it to you, and because of that protection, your energy is preserved, your focus remains intact, and your progress compounds. This is why people who lack rituals and structures often feel drained even when they aren't doing much, because their energy is scattered across constant micro decisions, constant reactions, constant interruptions, and even small tasks feel exhausting. But when rituals and structures are present, you are carried by momentum. Each small action flows into the next without resistance. And what once felt heavy now feels light. What once drained you now fuels you, because you are no longer fighting against your own chaos. You are flowing with your own design. The beauty of rituals and structures is that they don't need to be complex. In fact, the most powerful ones are simple but consistent. A 10-minute ritual of planning your day can remove hours of wasted time. A nightly ritual of gratitude can rewire your brain to focus on progress instead of problems. A structure of batching tasks can save enormous amounts of energy compared to constant context switching. It's not about making life rigid. It's about creating rhythms that free you from unnecessary stress. And when you experience the difference, you realize how much energy you were wasting before. When your rituals are strong and your structures are clear, you step into a level of flow that feels unstoppable. You are no longer drained by trivial decisions, no longer derailed by distractions, no longer dependent on bursts of motivation. Instead, you are guided by a system that aligns your energy with your priorities every single day. And that alignment creates power, a steady, renewable, compounding power that stress cannot touch, because stress thrives on disorder, and disorder cannot survive inside a life built on rituals and structures. Systems turn chaos into consistency and stress into flow, because they transform what feels unpredictable into something structured, what feels overwhelming into something simple, what feels out of control into something you can navigate with clarity. Most people live in a state of constant reaction, jumping from one demand to the next, fighting fires, scrambling to keep up, and as a result, their energy is always scattered, their mind is always racing, their stress levels are always rising, and they mistake this constant chaos for the price of ambition or success, when in reality it's simply the absence of systems, because systems take that same chaos and break it down into repeatable steps. They create patterns out of randomness, they create rhythm out of noise, And once you have rhythm, the stress begins to dissolve and flow begins to emerge. Chaos is not just about having too much to do. It's about having no framework for how to do it. When everything feels urgent, when priorities shift every hour, when you are constantly switching from one thing to another, the brain cannot settle. It's overloaded, and overload creates stress. But when you insert systems, you relieve the brain of that overload, you give it a roadmap, you give it structure, and suddenly, instead of worrying about everything at once, you are focused on one thing at a time, handled in a sequence that makes sense, and that sequence turns stress into flow. Because flow happens when the mind is fully absorbed in what it's doing without the distraction of everything else. Think about someone managing a business without systems. Every new client, every message, every problem feels like a storm. The owner is pulled in 10 directions, constantly guessing what to do next, constantly reacting, and stress is inevitable. But the moment systems are put in place, systems for communication, systems for scheduling, systems for problem solving, the chaos calms down. It doesn't mean the problems disappear, but now they are handled in a consistent way. The owner no longer feels buried. They feel in command. And when you feel in command, stress loses its grip. You begin to experience flow even in areas that used to feel overwhelming. Consistency is the real prize of systems because consistency is what creates results. Anyone can have a good day once in a while. Anyone can feel inspired occasionally, but without systems, those moments remain isolated. They don't compound. They don't build momentum. And momentum is what transforms effort into achievement. Systems take the scattered efforts of your life and align them into a pattern that repeats. And the repetition builds mastery. The repetition builds progress. The repetition builds flow. What once felt like climbing uphill every day starts to feel like being carried downhill because the consistency takes over and does the heavy lifting. Stress thrives in inconsistency. When you never know if you'll follow through, when you never know if you'll have enough energy, when you never know if you'll actually complete what you start, your brain is always tense, always bracing for failure, always worried about falling behind. But systems erase that inconsistency. They make the action predictable. They make the results reliable, and your nervous system begins to relax. You start to trust yourself. You start to feel steady, and steadiness is the soil where flow grows because flow requires trust in the process. It requires confidence that the structure will hold. And once that trust is there, stress no longer rules the day. Look at athletes again. Without systems, their training would be chaos. Some days too much, some days too little, injuries piling up, progress stalling. But with systems of training schedules, recovery plans, nutrition protocols, the chaos is gone. Their body knows the rhythm. Their mind trusts the structure. And so they find flow inside the routine. The same is true for musicians, entrepreneurs, students, anyone who must perform at a high level. When they lack systems, everything feels chaotic. When they have systems, performance feels natural. Stress fades and consistency replaces it. What's powerful is that systems don't just manage tasks, they manage emotions. When you know exactly what to do and when to do it, you don't spend your day second guessing yourself. You don't carry the anxiety of wondering if you're falling behind. You don't feel guilty about what you forgot because the system catches those things. The system holds the weight for you. And the emotional relief is enormous. Your stress drops not because life got easier, but because life got organized. And when life is organized, your mind can relax into flow instead of tightening into stress. Flow is often described as a state of effortless performance where time disappears and action feels natural. But what most people don't realize is that flow doesn't appear in chaos. Flow appears in structure. You cannot get into flow when you're distracted by 100 moving pieces. You cannot get into flow when you're constantly worried about what's next. Flow requires boundaries. It requires clarity. It requires a container, and systems create that container. They hold the space for you to lose yourself in the work, and that's why systems turn stress into flow. They give your mind the confidence to fully engage without fear of missing something or dropping the ball. Another truth is that systems make adaptation easier because chaos is fragile. When you're improvising every day, even a small disruption can throw everything off. One unexpected meeting, one problem, one emergency, and suddenly your entire day collapses into stress. But when systems exist, they absorb disruption. They give you a framework to adjust within. And that flexibility keeps you steady. Instead of falling apart under pressure, you bend and recover. And that resilience is what keeps you in flow even when circumstances change. So systems don't just turn chaos into consistency. They also turn uncertainty into stability. And stability is the foundation for sustained progress. The human brain craves patterns. It finds safety in rhythms. And that's why systems feel so liberating once they're in place. because they align with how the brain naturally wants to operate. Without them, the brain feels scattered and overwhelmed. With them, the brain feels calm and focused. And that calm focus is exactly what allows flow to happen, because flow is the mind's way of rewarding you for operating within a clear channel. Chaos blocks that channel. Systems open it. When people resist systems, it's usually because they think they will feel trapped. They fear structure will take away their freedom, but opposite is true. Systems create freedom, because when chaos rules your life, you're enslaved to stress. When consistency rules your life, you're free to use your energy however you choose, and flow becomes your natural state. You no longer need to fight your environment. You no longer need to force results. You ride the rhythm of the systems you've built, and that rhythm carries you forward with less effort and less stress. Don't chase results. Design systems that guarantee them, because results are never random. They are the byproduct of repeated actions done with consistency over time. Yet most people spend their lives obsessing over outcomes, staring at the scoreboard, worrying about the destination, and forgetting that what produces the result is never the obsession itself, but the system behind it. When you chase results, you live in constant anxiety, because you're measuring yourself against something you don't fully control. You're attached to the outcome, but blind to the process, and that attachment fuels stress, frustration, and disappointment. But when you design systems, you release yourself from the trap of outcomes. You focus on the controllables. You create a structure that makes success inevitable, and the results arrive as a natural side effect of the system. Think of someone who wants to lose weight. If they chase results, they obsess over the scale. They weigh themselves every morning. They panic when the number doesn't change fast enough. They feel discouraged when progress stalls, and that emotional roller coaster often leads them to quit. But someone with a system doesn't focus on the scale. They focus on their daily structure, a system of meal preparation, a system of training sessions, a system of hydration and sleep. And because they run the system, the result takes care of itself. The scale moves because the system is consistent, not because they stressed over it. That's the power of designing systems that guarantee results. The system becomes the driver. The result becomes the passenger. The same principle applies to wealth. Too many people chase financial results. They look at their bank account every week, hoping it will magically grow. They focus on how much money they want to make. But without systems, their progress is inconsistent at best. Yet those who build systems for saving, investing, and creating value in the marketplace experience steady growth, because they aren't hoping for results. They're engineering them. The system makes saving automatic. The system makes investing routine. The system makes value creation consistent. And over time, the results compound. Not from chasing, but from structuring. When you chase results, you're always in a state of impatience. You feel like you're never there yet. You're always measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that gap creates stress. It makes you feel like you're losing. But when you design systems, you shift your attention to what's within your control today. You focus on running the system. And because the system is something you can execute daily, you begin to feel progress every single day. The sense of momentum replaces the sense of lack. And momentum creates motivation, which creates more action, which reinforces the system. And in that cycle, the results become guaranteed. Chasing results is like staring at the fruit on a tree, hoping it will ripen faster just because you want it to. But designing systems is like watering the roots, tending the soil, ensuring the sunlight. The fruit will ripen not because you stressed over it, but because the system beneath it made it inevitable. The results you want in life are fruit, and the systems you build are the roots. Without strong roots, the fruit never appears. With strong roots, the fruit is guaranteed. You don't need to chase it. You need to nurture the system that produces it. Most people set goals without building systems. They write down that they want to read more books, but they never create a system of reading 10 pages a day. They say they want to grow their business, but they don't create a system for generating leads or following up with clients. They want to have better relationships, but they don't create a system for quality time, communication, or appreciation. And because they lack systems, their goals become empty wishes, dreams without structure, results without engines, and they end up frustrated. Believing success is luck, when in reality, it's just design. The beauty of systems is that they remove the pressure of the result, because if you know your system works and you know you're running it, the result is already on its way. You don't need to stress about when it will show up. You trust the system. You lean on the system. You let it do its job, and that trust creates peace of mind. The stress fades because you no longer live in uncertainty. You know you're on the path. You know every action compounds, and that certainty is what keeps you moving forward when others quit. because they didn't design systems. They only chased results. Results are snapshots. Systems are movies. Results are moments in time. Systems are the continuous story. Results show you where you are. Systems determine where you're going. And once you understand this, you stop obsessing over the snapshot and start focusing on the story, because when the story is built on powerful systems, the snapshots will eventually reflect that. The scoreboard always catches up with the system. So the wise don't stare at the scoreboard. They master the playbook. They refine the process. They run the system with discipline. And the victories come as a natural consequence. Another truth is that systems outlast motivation. They outlast moods. They outlast circumstances, because a result you chase can slip away with one bad week, but a system you've designed will keep pulling you back on track. If your system is waking up at a certain time and executing a set of actions, then even if you feel tired, even if life feels heavy, the system still carries you forward. It keeps you moving toward the result. And that's why people with strong systems always outperform those who rely on chasing results with bursts of energy, because chasing is fragile, but systems are durable. When you start thinking like a designer instead of a chaser, you stop asking, how do I get there? And you start asking, what system can I build that makes getting there inevitable? You stop living in hope and start living in engineering. You stop putting pressure on yourself to deliver results and start putting pressure on your systems to deliver consistency. And that shift changes everything, because now your job isn't to magically succeed. Your job is to build and run the system that makes success automatic. Life becomes lighter when you stop chasing and start designing, because chasing always feels desperate. It feels exhausting. It feels like running after something that's always just out of reach, but designing feels empowering. It feels strategic. It feels like planting seeds that you know will grow. And as you nurture the systems, the results appear, sometimes faster than expected, sometimes slower, but always steadily, because you're no longer trying to control the uncontrollable. You're mastering the controllables. And that mastery is what creates freedom. Certainty